Hi, everyone. Hello. Good morning. Can you all hear me, or should I use the microphone? Those for microphone, hands up. Okay, no microphone. Good. I'm proud that you can hear me clearly. I will stop the music. I have a class today. All right. You should not see that. And there it is. And slideshow. Hi, how is everyone doing today? All right. You can see everyone is happy and smiling. Um, so today I'm talking about native research and indigenous methodologies. I like colored out indigenous methodologies because I don't think I'm qualified to speak about this yet. I think it's a bit more advanced than the work that I've done. And hopefully, maybe when I'm done with this doctorate, I will be able to be exploring that method of research. But I'm going to be honing in on theoretical assumptions in my qualitative research. So just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do today, for like 20 minutes or so, I would reflect on my personal experiences in conjunction with the readings. Then there will be Q&As. And then we stretch. Then we have a group discussion. And then the interviews, which I think you are anticipating already. All right. Interviews. You're going to interview yourselves. All right. So to start off, a little bit about me. I was trained as an architect in Lagos, Nigeria. My architecture school was very technocratic. So they focused on solving problems of housing by architectural design. I don't know how that works. Then I studied for a year in Germany, where I was introduced to urban planning, or as they say in German, Stadtplan. And up to date, I have worked with civil society organizations and NGOs for about 9 years now. As you can see from my wallpaper, I love anime and manga, if you know what that is. And I'm trying to learn Chinese, or trying to. Shenhan can attest to how well I'm doing. You're most likely to find me at the Z Center on Sundays, because that's a newfound hobby for me, swimming. All right, that's enough about me. Where am I from? Lagos. This is Lagos. This is Victoria Island, Lagos. It can be a beautiful city where there's no traffic. And here is another picture of Lagos. This is Marina in Lagos. Lagos is a melting pot of so many different cultures and origins. There's an area toward that side where the returned slaves settled. And then the Omoniles, these are the people that did not, were not exported to Europe and America as slaves, sort of were originated from. And then we have other Nigerians from all part of Nigeria coming into Lagos and creating this very huge mix of cultures, and can be a wonderful experience to go through it. Here is another picture also of Lagos. You've probably seen many versions of this picture, but here is a community called Ajegunle. Here is Ajegunle. This is Apapa, and this is in a local government called Ajeromi Ifelodun. This community has a strong history of spatial inequality, as it's visible. You have people with their swimming pools and their green housing, and then you have the so-called slum community. So you're starting to see that communities are, by the way, I need to also mention that I will be recording this presentation just with my camera. So FYI. And then we have, this is also Lagos. This is a community in Lagos called Makoko Community. If you're an architect, you probably have read an article on Art Daily or somewhere about this community. It's a floating community. A lot of people here are fishermen and women. And there's a sawmill called the Okobaba sawmill. So that's why you see this mist on the image. So I'm just trying to start off by showing you the many faces of Lagos. In Makoko, Makoko. Yes. And as I said, I've worked with civil society organizations. Here is a picture from one of the events that we organized. So I conducted a year-long participatory action research with a community similar to Makoko, but it's called the Oworonshoki community. I'm not going to spell that. It's the Oworonshoki community. And this community, we have a lot of people, it was a project with women specifically, and a lot of them were fisher people, they were traders. And the idea of the project was to bring them together and bring them with architects and designers to see how they can co-produce and co-design and co-produce innovations and solutions to micro-scale challenges that they're facing in their community. And some women group came up with some interesting ideas. There were ideas of coming up with a building code, for example, on how they can build more sustainably and with local vernacular materials. Some innovations were to create a mobile health clinic that can, provide health services and checkups to people in the community. Some women came up with the idea of an allotment garden. These were small micro-scale solutions that they were producing as a result of this engagement. In July of 2023, the community was razed to the ground. And here is a picture of the damage. There was a church that was left standing. You can see. And the government's rationale for this was that the community was blocking the waterways, and also that the community was harboring criminals. And this was not a new rationale. This is something that has happened for a long time. And so we thought it important to put together with the community members, a fact sheet of the events that led up to the evictions. So we saw some fallacies. This was just, elaborating the fallacies within the government argument for why they demolished the community. And again, with the investigative work that some of the community members did, they found this very bogus land use plan that just painted over the area that's, allocated it for a jetty. This was the biggest jetty in the whole world, if there were ever such a jetty. So in the work that I do, it is very easy to think of the government, especially the people that I work with, to think of the government as the enemy. They're the villains of our narrative, the ones that want to take away our homes. And so I was consulted by an organization in Abuja to work with another community in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. They're called the Bayi community. And this Bayi community, we sat down. They've also been experiencing, the effect of rapid urbanization as the city closes in on them. So they're already in the inner city, but development efforts are happening around their peripheries, and they feel this closing in. And we heard their stories, but then we also organized a workshop to speak with the members of the government and the agencies that are responsible for these development efforts. And it was there that I saw that the officials are actually still victims of these development efforts. They have family members that are losing land. They themselves are losing land. And we were speaking with the Resettlement and Compensation Office, and they felt trapped and helpless in this system that tends to colonize land. So for me, I started to see that perhaps, there are still these legacies of colonialism that are, within the structures of planning and development in the city. And for me, that was a problem, right? And I think the problem is captured in this question, as you can see here. Are notions of development within infrastructure systems representative of the social and political values of society? This is a question that I've adapted from Erica's piece, and I'm also willing to hear your thoughts. What do you think about this problem? Do you think that the architecture, the infrastructure of a place, of a city, represents the social and political values of that place? Anyone? Dina?
I think it represents the social and political values of those who are in power. So not the society as a whole, but those who hold the financial or political power.
It's an interesting perspective. Anyone? You will agree? Counter perspective? Erica?
Less there's been communication early on to develop the values for and if they have to have some kind of power over those who are making decisions that have some kind of responsibility to those lives. It does.
Elena?
I have something like, it depends on what type of development. Like, I was on the phone with the tenant yesterday who just really wants their amenities in their building fixed to be workable. Like, they see that as worthwhile, meaningful, changing of the infrastructure of the place that they live, and care less about an extra lane on the highway, a block or a town over. So I think when we think about development as large infrastructure rather than local is not even the right word, but focused infrastructure, that is part of that disparity too.
So I think these are different perspectives that I certainly I thought about, and I wanted to make this a research agenda for myself, and that leads me to the selection of my research design. So how did I take all these things that I was thinking about and distill it into a research? Something that really helped was my research design class. The PhD program has this research design class. And that helped me figure out how I would begin and how I would choose a methodology for my inquiry. So I was, introduced to not for the first time, but the class helped me understand the theoretical or philosophical assumptions about the nature of the problem that I'm trying to deal with, what strategies of inquiry exist, and the specific research methodology that works well for that strategy. And then to help me choose what, philosophical assumption, I would need to understand the nature of my problem. I would need to think about and reflect on my own personal experience. And as you can tell, for me, working with the communities, I needed to be conscious that I wasn't misrepresenting perspectives from state officials, for example. And I had to think about the audience that I wanted to connect with. Am I speaking to an audience of statisticians, or am I speaking to an audience of policymakers or other academics? And this would help me choose. Here is a summary or diagram. You might find it helpful, you might not find it helpful. But this diagram is from a research design book that gives you a list of different paradigms or epistemologies or ontologies. You have post-positivist or post-positivism, constructivist, advocacy, participatory, pragmatic. I believe many are familiar with what these words mean. If you're not, there are readings that can help you be familiarized with this. But I found myself leaning more towards pragmatism, because here is why. I needed to remain fair, and I needed to remain analytically authentic. I needed to respect the privacy of the people that I'm speaking with, while allowing for democratic critique of the organizations that they are operating in. And so this is an excerpt really from the ethical decision making in qualitative research. So again, depending on the way you conceive of the nature of the problem, you might ask different questions. If you're thinking of the problem as a positivist, it means that you have the assumption that this problem can be known, or the answer to the question can be known empirically and tested and retested and generalizable, as people say. But again, these are not fixed categories, right? They're interwoven, and many people would even say that positivism does not have a place in qualitative research. But I'm just using this to help you start to think about what your own research problems are and how you think of it. How is it constructed? Is it something that can be known? Is it something that it is experiential, that you need to experience? And for some, they would prioritize the process over the product of the research. So and I think this sort of leads you to see how messy qualitative research can be, right? It can be quite a messy endeavor. And when you're engaging in qualitative research, you tend to deal with people telling you what is the internal and external validity of your research. Many journals, for example, that are policy journals, and policymakers are becoming more pressured to look for evidence for decision making. And they tell you, what you're introducing bias in your research. So in qualitative research, the most important thing, or one of the most important things you can hold on to, is your methodological integrity. And that means that there is no one correct way to do qualitative research. Also from that paper in the readings, Ethical Decision Making in Qualitative Research, so there is rarely ever one solution to an ethical problem when you're also dealing with the ethics of your research. So for me, how did I try to ensure methodological integrity? This paper I found to be quite useful, Methodological Integrity of Critical Qualitative Research. And it lists out some things to look out for, right? If you want to ensure elements to look out for, if you want to ensure methodological integrity. Data adequacy. So for that means, the data you're getting needs to be representative of the question that you're trying to answer. In my case, I had to speak with people who are really at the helm of the institutions or representative of the stakeholder groups. So if I was speaking with the planning unit for water in the state, I had to speak with the director, because they would then have that knowledge that, sort of indicates what the general direction is, or what the rationale for the decision making is, because I was really concerned about how decisions were made in my research. Perspective management in data collection analysis is something I also had to watch out for. I used a framework that I thought, would try to eliminate my bias. It was a framework called the NEAR framework. This is used by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development for development planning initiatives. And here is how I tried, but I realized that this framework also was limited, so I had to modify it. So here is a quick summary. Taking the interviews
this is the system
that
of
I
coding of the
had,
data. We have the 6 components
extracting
of
excerpts from what they were saying
the research, and we have the codes that I use to extract the data from the transcript. So yellow is tracking information, green is the definition, blue is information about the development plan, and so on and so forth. So what I now do is, after I have taken, read through the information and
So I will just move on. I
analyzed,
have a minute to
I
go.
bring all the respondents of each. So each.
Let's see. Yeah, I also employed maps. So trying to see how what people are saying translates to the real world spatially. Where are the water infrastructure? I haven't mentioned before that my research was on water infrastructure, but yes, trying to see how, the community's knowledge for how to produce and provide water matched up with what they were saying and how it contrasted with what the state's approach to water infrastructure provision was operationalized. So this is a map of the state's, infrastructure, and this is a map of like community-based infrastructure for water in the city. And I was, able to spatially analyze them. So for me, the nature of my problem was quite pragmatic. It was, I had to look for what works to best explain, the phenomenon that I was observing. And I did not stick to one paradigm. I was really shifting between more qualitative and quantitative metrics or measures of the data that I was finding. And so I will conclude with a question: what philosophical assumptions are inherent in your own research problem or your general area of research interest? And what ethical concerns do you see therein? This is a question for everyone. We'll take a few minutes to respond to this question. Anyone can raise your hand, speak. Erica? Okay.
I don't know how many people have had a chance to read the readings today, but in my case, one of the ethical questions was, do I have the right to reveal or expose personal or private information about genealogy or ancestry for my children or for others in the family who don't want necessarily to have their personal information? Another aspect was to what degree might trying to advocate on behalf of property that was facing loss because of infrastructure. To what degree could I, you guys? Okay, to what degree, how personal could I get with the public? And what are the stakes of making personal history in the public?
All right. Okay, so maybe to facilitate this discussion, we'll break up into groups. Before the groups, if you want to stretch, feel free to stretch. But I would say maybe groups of 5, and we discuss this question in our little groups, and then we come back to share what we discussed. Is that okay?
That slide that talked about like had the different qualitative methods, like cognitive, like
This one?
Just when if this slide is of interest, I'm happy to talk about every point and some of the historical theoretical underpinnings on how the perspective came about. But it would be more of a historical lecture and less of a case base. But I can do that. Yes. Or I could put it as a read. Okay, I'll try to add some next time. Next time it's fine.
All right, super. So groups of 5, please.
Basically, the vision was passed down, and it was like, almost like a field. So like, it was within it. And with the British rock, the part of the block, and those are things, and it was more fighting. And temple day, like say, and there, I guess, when a lot of things on this document, how do you connect, how do you, I said, the intelligence community. But like, I put my position on is the whole text, in my environment where it has been hereditary, like stuff. And that's why. And property, we're not. Those are like. A lot of people have that like that. Where do what the showing us in like how I'm really saying
So. I'm not saying it's how we included both extractions. So much. That response is I'm always this strictly acceptable experience from. Surgery. And I was like, internal that's a reason about understanding like traffic research. They all the question I'm gonna what is it mean to not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like jobs are not a community, they're not but they go in a way it's not on the
I don't want that.
what is it that centering out of that personalized relationships. Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing where, we're taking a look at basically for
Right. Yeah. That's really valuable. Like, that's really justified and
And like, and you know, for yourself. Yeah.
Somebody.
I mean, like a learning experience.
And like watch and like how I can like again so in a way that's so and so because it's like we have so many I think also what and I think translating that cottage and how we really
One thing that it's not
Right now. I'm just doing some of like how. Reaching out. But I'm just like, in my biggest. I'm not sure. I don't think like it's like how to that's the big thing. Yeah, right. In my very like they don't with my yeah. I don't know exactly. I mean, somewhere I did all yeah, I read before it. I heard years ago. I have everybody's been good at all these yeah, guys. Even you guys like
I gotta pick a big one. And like, I was like, oh, I also, and there was like, I saw you like on the inside, probably the biggest noise from the other person. I don't know, it's just, you're not like, it's not just not like, there's a lot. Like, I feel like what I really
Essentially drawing more.
5 minutes, 3 minutes more, and then we would come back together. 3 minutes.
No, we really.
Can I talk to you about my topic? Absolutely. I'm really interested. So I grew up in cancer.
Cancer?
Cancer out to like strip of Louisiana,
Okay.
like the highest.
Okay.
And I'm interested because a lot of my friends ended up working in clinics. And I think a lot of the conversations gone into the area
Mhm.
that seems like it's in like the environment that impacts the health risk and like fails to discuss the like human labor that goes behind maintaining and producing these systems.
Mhm.
And so I really want to do like qualitative research and like interviewing these people and like getting a better understanding of like how these systems actually operate in the ground and like different hierarchy and I'm like struggling to find like a specific focus or like what necessarily like being certain things. It's like I don't know if there's like something to like
Many times we don't. We don't know. I think my topic of my initial study was data-driven planning in resource-sparse context. Let's see, long thing because I started to see something emerging. Usually not enough, but I like that you have this general research area interest and that you're looking at that area from how it is constructed by the field, right? And their daily lives, right? So if you want a level, I'll hand over the level of constructed field, but it doesn't really mean anything, right? And I think as you're you're asking them questions about their daily lives in connection with like labor and the production of like environmental hazards or whatever, you will see things emerging.
it also feels like there's just like it's such like a complex issue. It's like elements of like plantation of slavery that's like working into like a plan to develop and like
So I want to bring the group together, but let's definitely talk. Are you in my station or which station are you in?
you Friday was
Okay, but I will connect with her. All right, everyone. Time is up. I hope we all enjoyed the 20 minutes or so of discussions in our small groups. So At this point, any volunteer, I mean, you're not compelled to, but if there's anyone that wants to talk about what they discussed in their group, any new insight, something that they were not thinking about before that, you know, they're starting to think about. Volunteer? Okay. Colin.
So I'm thinking about looking at the elected officials and random people engage with the public comment process, municipal meetings, and what their experience with this thing is. And just like I personally felt like things, you know, comments could go on for like hours and hours. Counselors are just sitting there like on their phones. What does that mean for how citizens experience like this interaction with the democratic system, and like how elected officials view it? If they would be honest with me in asking them that, I don't know. So
Yeah. That's great. Very good. Thank you for volunteering. Anyone? Okay.
Okay, I don't know if I have this like in the scope of, oh yes, Anand. I don't know if it's in the scope of this class, but, I have been. Where do I begin? So I practiced this traditional Indian dance from Bharatanatyam, and it was originally, a low caste art form that's performed in South India by the Adivasi community. It was temple dance. And basically through like British Raj, it was co-opted by upper caste Brahmin Tamil people to become a high art or a performance art on stage. And so a lot of the stories and the traditions which were passed down orally, and it was a hereditary dance form, so it was kind of like a guild family based system of learning the art form and practicing it. A lot of those stories have been erased actively by upper caste Brahmin community, also with political ties to the Hindutva movement. So I guess like a question that I've been really curious about is like, what is documenting these oral stories of the Adivasi community that is still living today? And it's not just dance, it was also mridangam, like percussion and music. And so what is my position entering a community that I'm not a part of, because I'm an upper caste Brahmin man, to come and document, is documenting enough? And would I still be practicing extractive philosophies entering? And I think the reading that you gave us of like whether these stories are allowed to be more than just personal. Yes. And in the family, I think really resonated with me, because it's like, I think these stories have to be highlighted, the history and heritage has to be highlighted, but the ways in which I enter the work, I don't ever want to practice harm.
Hmm.
So I guess, yeah, some of those questions.
Great.
Don't please.
One of the books that I put as research on the syllabus, it's indigenous methodologies. The whole book really, when I recommend that everybody think about the reading, but it talks quite a bit about all those, not only studying one's own people, but also working with communities and outside, and especially if it's communities that don't have power and it on the same way. So, but yes, it sounds like a wonderful project, but that's a dissertation.
That's why I said
That's a
PhD a little too
dissertation.
big.
So maybe if you want to start for this class, what I'd say is, perhaps begin to sketch out a method of your approach You know, I don't know if you're already in contact with the communities from which you've already begun learning the dance form, but that might be the best way is to ask them. You know, so, you know, say what your interest is and what might be the best way to, is this something you would want? Here's why things work, you know, and really with no agenda of an outcome. That's the hardest thing. It's like, you know, they can say no, and then can you accept it? I would say secondly, the research that I've done in Boston, I forget if I give you anything for that book, the syllabus, but working with the Asian community, I was not allowed to work with the clients of this social service organization, for medical privacy reasons. And I worked with the staff to come up with a different way of trying to understand what's happening in the community by talking with them and creating questionnaires that they thought would be acceptable, and then they themselves said that it would be best to work with staff members. You know, they told me many of us went through the process of being migrant, going through to now staffing. So they became my primary resources for information. But it can take a long time, and a challenge is, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
A challenge is with, you know, I think too often we don't see the work of creating relationships when we do, whether it's research or whether trying to do a planning exercise and talking about the importance of not causing harm. You know, that's something that bioethicists think about, but they don't tend to think about it from the perspective of the clinician and the patient becoming related in some long-term way, even though our doctors tend to be, you know, they can be our caregivers, but they're not really our family. You know, so there is literature out there, but you might have to look at other disciplines, but there's increasingly literature on how to do activists critically based. I have tons. So whatever, I just want to share with everybody, whatever's not in the syllabus that you have interest in, don't hesitate to email me or reach out, you know, especially with your individual projects, and ask your teaching assistants. Because, you know, I'm getting older, but I've been at this for like 30 years, but I've probably forgotten a lot more than you guys will probably learn, because I've it's graduate school. No, I'm serious. From like I started 1993, and I didn't graduate until 2003 with like 3 different degrees at that time, but taking like 4 classes a year. So I ran that. Anyway, feel free. Always ask for help. Don't hesitate. Prepare. Okay, back to you.
All right.
Let us know when the documentary comes out. Awesome.
Okay, anyone wants to share what they discussed in their group as well? Few more. Yes, Isma? Mm-hmm.
Whatever you say on it does it is something that I struggle with throughout all of the pandemic as a project is that assuming that I'm going to this community that there's something expected in this but not being able to like we do something for them. I think that is something that struggle with, but also because there is a gap that I've identified always on the that you talk to people, you have these results, and then you go to the people who can actually make changes and be like, okay, they probably wanted to make good in the group disregard all of that and say, we don't keep people what they say, we always valid and why like they don't do the same stories because they want these communities, and I think I've always felt like almost this struggle of like kind of betraying the people who are trusted me for this process, and then not being able to go back and what do we say? And I think in the last job that I was doing, a lot of it involved political research. The team would always try to see, oh, what incentives can we give? And sometimes they would come up with things like, oh, let's give them a wheelchair. Like they
like what kind of incentives are these when they don't even have access to roads, they don't even have access to rent, they don't even have access to these things, and they're like, let's give these incentives to them. When they're so materialistic, they don't actually address the problem. So I think this is what I sit with a lot when I think about what a researcher, because I would like to call myself as anyone. I like that's what I still, and I've always struggled with these notions.
I will respond to this quickly. Let's see. The fact that you're struggling with this, it's a good sign. Erica is still struggling with it.
Yes.
And we will all continue struggling with it. So keep on struggling with it. And there are readings that I can recommend also after to help you explore that and find yourself within and find your center, right? As well. To help you continue doing the work, the good work that you're doing. And also, understand the implications of navigate that. Sir, were you raising your hand, Helena?
No.
Okay, I thought you
No, that's okay.
hand raised a bit. Okay,
Just listen.
Erica?
It's another question. Isabel, sorry. One of the things that is I have, and this is partly why I think I now sit in urban studies and planning, I'm no longer in anthropology, is because it was very frustrating for me to just document and for my audience to just be other anthropologists. So for me, the one thing that I found is helping to organize. I mean, it's kind of like you can decide you have that capacity, perhaps to help the people or assist them with the organizing process, kind of like in the indigenous planning piece where they described perhaps there's ways to build capacity among disabled residents or so that they can put forth their plan to the city and maybe mobilize more pressure. I'm not sure where you might work, but another thing, part of the reason why I teach this class the way I'm teaching it is for those of you who may end up someday as academics or even in your work environments, that you can speak to the why should we listen, and to your colleagues, to explain how knowledge that's coming from the ground up can be just as valid or authoritative as what you find, by an expert who's coming from the side. And talk about those questions of power and knowledge. It's hard, but I appreciated the indigenous planning piece in some ways because it also showed me how a planning process can be empowering and not, even though it had its conflicts, it didn't feel to me as extractive as a piece of writing or a piece of research as some other things that I've read. And so I have hope, and this is why I'm over here in this department, that we can, think in new ways about how to communicate among different actors and agencies that admittedly have different levels of power and are positioned differently historically and otherwise. But that I think the more of us who are, who have the skills of communicating kind of like from the heart, I suppose, the more it'll become normal and not be seen as a bias or unscientific or not rational. Anyway, so you guys know I wear my heart on my sleeve. Well, you can see my tail, but I do have my partners. But anyway, okay, back to it.
All right, so I'm still happy to take responses from your group discussion, but your questionnaire will be going around now. I don't know, Erica, do you want to speak to the exercise of interviews?
Yes. This new process is really, I want us to ask these questions of each other. This is the first time I've given the questions in advance. I don't know if any of you looked on the Canvas site, but it's for you to get to know each other better. And I hope you choose someone you don't know well, but just interview whoever you can. And try to just do 5 minutes each, you know, you may find it extending longer, you know, kind of resist the temptation, because it's a lot more to transcribe. And we're gonna learn coding together using your responses that you upload. Okay, so what you're going to be saying, whatever you say, know that your colleagues may see your answers. And it may be part of a learning exercise in days to come. But have fun with it. And with that, you guys are actually free to go. And you can go somewhere else with your research partner